It's more fun. All right, Ron. Yeah, that's it. That's what I was trying to think of who that was. Doesn't it? I'll go with that.
Same level as this. Mark, did you get that email that I shot out this afternoon?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, Mr. Huskin, you ready? Order for 15th roll call, please.
Eversol,
Here.
Rodney, Nemitz, Wrestler,
Here.
Luke, Ocamp,
Here.
Martins,
Here.
and Riddle.
Everybody please stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
The United States of America.
Which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Justice for all.
Do you have any proclamations, recognitions, or presentations?
No, sir.
All right, under public input, the city clerk is going to read some previous submitted comments. And then we have already been notified that Paul Gillespie, Dan Lytle, and Natalie Lorenz wish to speak as well. And then anybody else that notifies James. So Wes, you're on.
We have 6 that we received. The first one, strongly object to the proposed changes to zoning that would allow Sunset Overlook to reopen their outdoor venue. This proposal smells of conflict of interest. The city council must represent all the citizens of Columbia and not bow to special interest. How many of the petitioners are homeowners? How many of the petitioners are residents of Columbia? How many of the petitioners would be directly affected by the noise? The neighborhoods impacted by Sunset Overlook are harmed by this proposal. The city should not sacrifice these peaceful neighborhoods for the sake of one business. Bruce Freeland, you are being asked to consider changes to Columbia's C1 zoning ordinances directly affecting Sunset Overlook's operations. Although the changes have been presented as if they are a compromise between Sunset and neighboring property owners, if enacted, the changes would essentially permit Sunset Overlook to operate as it did when it opened, which has caused much conflict and embroiled all involved. Patrons will, without question, gather on the back patio in large groups, engaging in heavy drinking and shouting juvenile obscenities toward our homes. Section G will not protect us, as we can hear every word theater, and we have the best seats in the house. The goal is to hear drunken screaming into the early morning
Les,
hours.
Not good.
Section G's use of the word deliberately also. What?
Les, we're hearing like every other word, and we've been advised.
Then Doug, you're gonna have to read these.
Yeah, yeah, Doug will read them.
I'll go ahead and start from the top. The first one is from Jerry and Dorinda Sakirka. We strongly object to the proposed changes to zoning that would allow Sunset Overlook to reopen their outdoor venue. This proposal smells of conflict of interest. The city council must represent all the citizens of Columbia and not bow to special interests, conflicts of interest, and petitioners. How many of the petitioners are homeowners? How many of the petitioners are residents of Columbia? How many of the petitioners would directly be affected by the noise? The neighborhoods impacted by Sunset Overlook are among the nicest, quietest in Columbia, and they will be harmed by this proposal. The city should not sacrifice these peaceful neighborhoods for the sake of one business. Bruce Freeland, you are being asked to consider changes to Columbia's C1 zoning ordinances directly affecting Sunset Overlook's operations. Although the changes have been presented as if they are a compromise between Sunset and neighboring property owners, if enacted, the changes would essentially permit Sunset Overlook to operate as it did when it opened, which has caused much conflict and embroiled all involved in extensive litigation. None of Sunset Overlook's prior seating or service areas were within a 50-foot setback of our properties, so the proposed setback in 17.26.030D will do nothing to protect us. Patrons will without question gather on the back patio in large groups, engaging in heavy drinking and shouting juvenile obscenities towards our homes. Section G will not protect us, as we can hear every word of even normal conversations. The area is essentially an amphitheater, and we have the best seats in the house if the goal is to hear drunken screaming into the early morning hours. Section G's use of the word deliberately also creates ambiguity that Sunset Overlook will use to claim the lack of intentional violations. Please protect our property rights as residents of Columbia. Paul Gillespie, I have lived in my home for 29 years now. Up until 2 years ago, it was peaceful, quiet, and had a beautiful view. Everything changed when Sunset Overlook opened. Sunset Overlook's owners had the property rezoned to C1 and told us on the record when doing so that they were going to be a bakery. Now we have a bar in our backyards. We have video recordings and multitudes of photos of what this has been like for us. People cursing, people flipping us the bird, people shouting 1, 2, 3, and then screaming in unison, followed by, what are they going to do? Sue us too? And then laughing together while it's pitch black outside in the summer. This is not a laughing matter. All we want is to have our peace back. We are simply asking that the city enforce the rules put in place to protect us and not enact new loophole-filled ordinances. We are happy to discuss potential solutions representing actual compromises, solutions that will end our problems and not simply perpetuate the current Hatfield and McCoy situation. Cindy Huseman, I am humbly asking the city to consider why the current protections offered by the C1 regulations were put in place to protect surrounding property owners. Back in 2005, the city specifically considered these provisions and in their transcripts noted that outdoor beer gardens would not be acceptable in C1 districts. Sunset Overlook has submitted self-drafted letters signed by people from all over St. Louis, Godfrey, Waterloo, etc. But no one who signed those letters has had to deal with Sunset Overlook's antics in their backyards. Their properties don't have a bar right down the hill. We are asking for a compromise that will allow Sunset Overlook to conduct business and still protect us. This commission must take note that even without outdoor service and without any ancillary entertainment, Sunset Overlook can and has thrived. In February 2020, before the coronavirus hit us, Sunset Overlook regularly had a full parking lot despite the Illinois courts restricting its activities to indoors only. We can coexist with Sunset Overlook, but our coexistence must reflect protection of our pre-existing property rights. We ask that you stand up and protect our constitutional rights now so that we all may avoid continued contentious litigation over these matters. Natalie Lorenz. The proposed changes to the C1 zoning ordinance, if enacted, will constitute illegal spot zoning, which is allowing uses in a location out of character from the surrounding area. In determining whether illegal spot zoning has occurred, Illinois courts consider whether the subject property is zoned in conformity with surrounding existing uses. Here, the proposed changes expand the current C1 ordinance so that it permits activities previously reserved only for businesses in C2 districts. Sunset Overlook previously requested C2 rezoning and was denied upon the very same considerations that a court would analyze in determining that zoning Sunset Overlook as C2 would be illegal spot zoning. There is no legitimate need for making the proposed changes to the C1 ordinance except as an end run around the spot zoning issue. And the changes, if enacted, will invite litigation with constitutional challenges. My clients want to see an end to this dispute and are more than willing to discuss ways to accommodate the needs of all parties involved. 1, disallow seating, service, and smoking in any yard adjoining a parcel used for residential purposes. And 2, disallow amplification of any sound such that the sound may be heard from neighboring properties. Excuse me. William Niehoff. My clients propose the following language to bring an end to this matter. 17.26.030B. Quote, restaurants, tea rooms, and cafes shall be allowed outdoor seating, service, and/or designated smoking areas, provided that they shall not be located in a front, rear, or side yard adjacent to a parcel used for residential purposes or zoned for residential uses, R1 through R7 zoning districts. 17.26.030G. The amplification of music, voice, or other sounds is prohibited in outdoor locations. Likewise, sounds shall not be amplified from within a structure in such a manner to be heard in an outdoor situation, i.e., through an open door or window. Sounds must not be heard beyond the property boundaries. These proposed changes, unlike the proposed 50-foot setback, represent a true compromise, allowing Sunset Overlook to have outdoor seating, service, and smoking in the front of its building, the best location to observe sunset, while allowing my clients to enjoy their homes and providing protection from noise. The 50-foot setback provides no compromise and will result in Sunset Overlook resuming the activities it carried on when this dispute began. We propose the above changes in a cooperative effort to resolve this matter and prevent more litigation.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Brim. Okay, now who's present for comments?
We have Natalie, Paul, and Dan.
Okay, who would like to go first out of those? Can they motion to you?
No.
Let Dan go first. Dan, are you there?
No.
Is Paul connected or?
Everyone, can you hear and see me now?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
there we are. All right. So to the council, I would suggest, so I represent Sunset Overlook, and what we're asking you to do is to continue to support us as the city has. And some of the history that I think is extremely relevant is that Sunset had been very open and with the board and the city and the planning commission every step of the way as they developed this business. It was very clear what their intentions were, what their expected business practices were. They worked with the city to find an appropriate zoning for them, and in reliance on that and the city's interpretation, they spent a lot of money to improve the property and make it suitable. And even in fact, despite the fact that we are effectively changing language from before, I think it's extremely important to understand that the city's position in terms of how it is interpreted its code, how it previously applied its code, and most importantly, how it advised businesses as to what they could and could not do within C1, included the very language that they're now putting into place. Effectively, this is not changing anything to benefit Sunset. This isn't making a new ordinance or language. This is effectively formalizing language that was part of the city's interpretation for years and years, and the same interpretation upon which Sunset was advised within which they could comply and which they had expended money to do so. Just to address a few points, I think it's very clear that there's a lot of support for Sunset. Many of the petitioners, I think over 50% of 3,000 petitioners, are from the city of Columbia. There are 18 residents within 250 feet who are petitioners in support of this. Sunset is a business that does provide a benefit to the entire city and its residents. Also brings in residents from elsewhere to support it through tax bases. We'd ask the city continue to support us in terms of other noises with respect to any compromises that have been requested. Sunset had been sued for ordinance violations as it relates to noise issues and had won each one. They comply with respect to their operating hours. This is not open past midnight. This is a place that is going to allow families and residents to continue to use it. And we would just ask the city to continue to support it as they have and formalize the language that's in front of you, because that's effectively what has been in place in terms of the city's interpretation and been advised to Sunset. So that's what we'd ask for tonight, that this be passed and allow them to continue the business as they were advised they could from the outset.
Thank you.
All right, you got Paul.
Go ahead and let Natalie. Are you got Paul?
Okay, hold on.
Either one. Natalie?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to tell you all thank you again for listening to me this evening. Just to address a couple of points. Well, first of all, just wanted to say I represent the neighboring landowners that are near Sunset Overlook's business. And just to clarify some points, whenever Sunset Overlook was asking for zoning changes, they actually asked for several kind of in a line over the years. And whenever Sunset Overlook was asking for those changes, it wasn't clear what their business was going to be. Whenever Sunset Overlook was asking for the changes, they represented to my clients, and this is on the record in the city's transcripts of these meetings, they represented that they were going to be a bakery and sell pastries. So my clients were definitely not clear that that this business was going to actually be a bar or a restaurant that sold, alcohol and had music and all things like that. My clients raised serious concerns whenever Sunset Overlook was asking for these zoning changes, and they were told at the time, "Oh, the zoning will protect you. The zoning will protect you." Well, obviously my clients are feeling kind of that the zoning has not protected them, and that now the zoning is being changed, potentially being changed or considered in order to benefit Sunset Overlook when it wasn't clear that this was going to be happening from the beginning. So I do want to thank you for listening to what I have to say this evening, just because I know it's been a long journey to this point, and obviously the city hasn't always seen eye to eye with my clients on these issues, but your careful consideration of the issue before you tonight is very important for a couple of reasons. Most importantly for everyone involved, I think, is a resolution of this matter that people can live with without resorting to more litigation. So, there's a whole lot of history behind how we got to where we are today. But the bottom line is that my clients believe that the ordinance, if it should pass before you as is without any editing whatsoever, there's constitutional concerns that are going to be raised, like spot zoning and other issues. And now I know that the city and Sunset Overlook have different opinions on this, but again, the bottom line is there's a dispute with the way this is currently drafted, and there's a reasonable path forward that will allow everyone to move forward peacefully. And all we're asking is just to have the city work with us and with Sunset Overlook too, and give everyone a chance to have some input on this. My clients don't want to put Sunset Overlook out of business, and that's never been the goal. They've caught a lot of flack from, people calling them things like the rich snobs up the hill. But, honestly, the Ingolds live on that same hill. And I think that any property owner, if they're well off or not well off, they can empathize with the issue that's coming to light here. So, I mean, you guys probably didn't know this, but I actually lived in Columbia for several years back when I first got out of law school. And Mayor Hutchinson may not remember me, but I was actually in the Kiwanis Club with him and with Will Trowbridge back in the day, and did some good things for the community. But so I remember whenever I lived in Columbia, I lived in the Columbia Lakes subdivision. So my house was in a large block that had numerous houses that were all facing the street, with all the backs of the houses facing this large grassy area that was like the common area. And there was some talk of turning that common area into kind of a walking path with benches and things like that. Would be a nice place for people to go. And I tell you what, there was some pretty serious backlash and pushback from people whose houses backed up to that common area. And I'll tell you why. It's because they didn't want to hear noise behind their house from people using this little walking path. So, I mean, but the funny thing to me is I see those same people now commenting on social media about how having a business serving alcohol with outdoor seating behind your home is no big deal. So, I mean, that's easy to say when it's not your home. I know Sunset Overlook has had a bunch of people sign a petition saying that they want Sunset Overlook to be allowed to have seating and service outside, but even those who live further down the hill than my clients don't have the same experience that my clients do. It's directly behind my client's home. It's right in their backyard. And I mean, I'm telling it, even though the hours might not be past midnight, there's definitely people still there past midnight, and they definitely do still scream and curse past midnight. So my clients, they do have some very real concerns, and the city can choose to address those issues head on in a way that ends this mess. So we've proposed reasonable ideas that would allow Sunset Overlook to operate outdoors, and we're asking the city to consider those ideas and work with us and with Sunset Overlook to bring it to a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have Paul now.
Yes.
Paul, you're on.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good evening. I'm Paul Gillespie. I've owned a home at 15 Seminole Drive in Columbia since July 27, 1991. Thank you for allowing me to address the City Council this evening. It's truly sad that we're here tonight discussing this matter of zoning of Sunset Overlook. And yes, the city's first response to my statement will be this is a discussion of C1 zoning. Folks, plain and simple, that position is nonsensical and just isn't true. This discussion is truly about Sunset Overlook, and you all know it. The proposed change has been artfully crafted under the smokescreen of addressing the cannabis matter, such that spot zoning proposed on Sunset Overlook's behalf is lost in the shuffle. And it's also about the city's ongoing unnatural predisposition towards Sunset Overlook and catering to their wishes, even though those actions are in direct conflict with the neighbor's basic rights of peaceful enjoyment of our homes. I could go on and on about how Sunset Overlook has made numerous misrepresentations, as well as documented online records to this city council. And I cannot for the life of me understand why those things continually are ignored. It's just a fact. It's all in there. But I'll save all those specific events for all those specific items for future events. Tonight's discussion is about a much more important and larger issue, in my view. Simply put, this matter is about right and wrong. Over and over, it's been brought up that hundreds of people have signed a petition in support of Sunset Overlook. Letter upon letter has been written to the City of Columbia in support of Sunset Overlook. Let me ask a question of the City Council here. What is the required number of signatures in support of unjust, unfair, and downright wrong legislation to make it okay to deny the rights of a few people or even one person? Is it 30? Is it 300? So for the record, tell us all now, what is the city's threshold to support the denial of a citizen's rights? In the United States of America, the answer is and should always be, there is no mob rule. There is no room for political favoritism. There is no threshold to support that justifies the violation of a single individual's rights. Here tonight, I submit to this city council, if you vote in support of this measure, you are supporting mob rule and political favoritism, and you are violating our rights, period. How would you feel if you sat down around 6:30 p.m. on a beautiful Saturday evening on the deck of the home that you built with your hard-earned money 29 years ago for your family, and that Saturday evening with your children, only to have that precious and peaceful time interrupted by numerous drunk people yelling F-bombs and other unspeakable obscenities directly at you? Folks, this bar is directly in my backyard. Mr. Lytle points out that there are people within 250 feet of the Sunset Overlook property that are okay with this. The Sunset Overlook property is very large. It is long. Those people are so far away from where the action is here, they can't hear it. This bar is literally in my backyard. I hear everything that goes on in there. This is not right. Would you be okay with this for your next door neighbor, for your family? Would you be okay with it for your neighbor down the street? If you vote for this measure here tonight, in my view, you are in fact not only voting to allow that type of behavior in the city of Columbia, you are clearly condoning it. This council has one of two paths to choose from: one of fairness and one of political favoritism in violation of our rights. I respectfully ask that the city council take the high road this evening and put an end to this dispute so we can all move on with our lives. No one wants this. We don't want to spend the time. We don't want to spend the money. We don't want to spend the effort. We do not want Sunset Overlook out of business. We want to be able to peacefully coexist in our homes. We ask that only two things be changed. Number one, restrict the outside use to the front of the building. Sunset Overlook has claimed in writing their business is about the sunset. This change allows for them to fully exploit their view of the sunset without destroying our ability to enjoy our view of that same sunset. Number two, strike the word deliberately from Section G. Placing the word deliberately in this provision allows Sunset Overlook to completely disavow responsibility for the actions that occur on their property. And it's clear they have time and time again disavowed and even encouraged and enticed people to attack us. And that is a fact. In summary, these are reasonable compromises that allow for Sunset Overlook to operate their business and for the close neighbors to have a reasonable chance of once again enjoying our homes, and will allow us all to put this matter behind us. No one wants or needs this ongoing battle. Our proposal affords the City Council an avenue to reach a reasonable and balanced compromise and to avert future costly and time-consuming issues. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, James, is there anybody else? Nobody else has asked to speak, be recognized? No other public input?
We just had one comment from Julie that said Sunset Overlook was going to be a bistro bakery originally. The bakery was eliminated prior to be zoned to a business C1.
Okay,
That was the comment.
any other comments or?
Another comment was, do the aldermen have copies of the supporting letters that were delivered to Scott Dunnicky from Sunset Overlook? And we responded, yes.
All right. Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Under comments and announcements, I have none. Any aldermen? No? Departments? None? Consent agenda, Mr. Hefkin.
We'll give it a shot. Is that better?
That is better.
We have 5 items under the consent agenda. The first one is a motion to approve the minutes of the June 1, 2020 regular city council meeting. Item number 2 is motion to approve closed session minutes of the June 1st, 2020 regular city council meeting. Item number 3 is motion to approve the payment of vouchers from the period of May 30th, 2020 through June 12th, 2020, totaling $282,876.33. Item number 4 is a motion to accept statement of funds for the period ending March 31st, 2020. And the fifth one is a motion to approve the special event permit for the City of Columbia Electronics Recycling, which is scheduled for August 1, 2020. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions, concerns on the consent agenda? With there being none, entertain a motion to approve as presented by Hook, second by Martins. Roll call.
Eversole, Agni, Nemeth,
Yes.
Rustler, Hook, Martins, Riddle. Thank you.
All right, under unfinished business, we have ordinance 3522, which authorizes a lease agreement amendment between the City of Columbia, Illinois and Nathan D. Williamson, DMD LLC, for the lease of improved real property located at 130 South Rapp. Any questions, comments on that? Is that a motion? Motion by Eversole to approve is presented, second by Riddle. Any other questions, comments? Roll call.
Eversole, Agni, Nemeth, Rustler,
Yes.
Hook, Ocamp,
Yes.
Martins, and Riddle. Thank you.
Okay, next would be ordinance number 3523, amending section 17.04.030, 17.26.030, and 17.56.020 of the Columbia Municipal Code. Any questions, comments? Alderman Ogden?
Yes, I'm fine with the ordinance in general. I need a better definition of the word deliberately. I'm thinking that people can have a quiet meal, and that would be fine. Oh, see, okay, I don't have a. If you're just sitting around the table and speaking peacefully, that would be fine. On the other hand, if there's deliberate shouting up the hill, that's objective. But what is in the middle? What if it starts to turn into a big party and everybody's happy and there's nothing that's offensive? What does deliberately really mean? Is it accidentally accelerating the?
Deliberate means intent.
Now, I understand that.
And that's,
What about that in between area?
well, that's,
Does the waitress go out or just, does the waitress just go out and say, could you guys hold it down a little bit? And that would be fine.
well, that's expected of a business owner, is they think they're allowed to go up to all the patrons and say, please, out of respect for our neighbors, please, lower your voices and get them to show respect for their neighbors.
Okay, is there some kind of a clause that could be in there to ensure that the people on the hill?
I'm not sure how to write that. I mean, they requested taking the word deliberate out of there.
Hang on, Scott, you want to chime in on this?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
The reason the word deliberate is in there is because I didn't want to have to send somebody to do code enforcement every time somebody slammed a car door or was talking out in the parking lot too loud. Deliberate means and that whole thing has to do with amplified music only. Okay. So that whole section is if you're amplifying music, voice, sound through an amplification system in order for it to be A, heard outside, done outside, or projected outside beyond the property lines, that is what that is intended to control. In other words, because ancillary entertainment would only be allowed indoors if the special use request is approved in one of the upcoming meetings. They wouldn't be able to play music indoors loudly enough to be heard outdoors in order to get around that loophole. That is the reason why that wording is exactly the way it is, simply to close a loophole from allowing people to play music indoors, to be heard outdoors, and to be heard beyond, just the people that are supposed to be hearing it. in order to get around that ancillary entertainment definition and loophole.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
Yeah, this is Steve Holkamp. I've got a question. The word deliberately is, I think it's going to open up more issues than it does, than it solves. I think that if a person is doing something deliberately, let's say you're speeding and you don't get a ticket unless you were deliberately speeding. I really think it's going to be very difficult for anybody to enforce a deliberate sound system being turned on. I just think we can do better in codes than that kind of a verbiage. And I'd also like to bring up one other point. Since this is a neighborhood business district, I've been thinking a lot about capping the hours of the outside establishments at a certain time, which is less than midnight. There's a lot of kids and stuff, and maybe not today, there's kids, but this is going to be forever. There's kids that go to bed at 7 and 8 o'clock at night. I don't think we want to have people at midnight outside. So I'd like to entertain at least some thoughts about capping the hours at 9 or 9:30 or something like that on the outside. Thank you.
All right. What was the question again, Terry?
The question Steve was raising was restricting hours of service. That was his question.
Or outside only.
Okay. And
I would
Alderman
agree.
Eversole?
I would agree with him.
Okay. All right. Alderman Ogden?
After we approve this or disapprove it, can we still put some kind of a time limit in this, or is that possible?
The ordinance should be amended prior
Well,
to
yeah,
adoption.
we can amend it after this if we feel that there needs to be a time restraint put on outside seating.
Okay.
So, all right. Any other questions, comments?
I don't care. I don't think it's right.
All right. Entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 3523 as presented. Motion by Hook, second by Riddle. Any other question, comment? Roll call. You there, Wes?
I do have
Eversole?
I have a question before we vote. Are we going to address the hours?
Yeah, we can.
Will that be after this vote?
Yes, it would be
Another
amended
meeting,
to
another
this.
amendment, or what would it be?
Well, depends how you're wanting to do it for all C1, right? This was questions to all C1.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would say that, Scott, how would you prefer? Because I don't want to be making extra work for you. Would you rather have it in this ordinance or
I think it would be just as easy to add, here, let me get to the right, to section 1726030B. Ads shall be allowed outdoor seating, service, and or designated smoking areas. And just add your time, not to operate later than 9 p.m.
Yep.
Right there. Provided they shall not be located within 50 feet of a property parcel, so on and so forth.
Yes.
So do we want to have?
So Jerry has his hand raised. I don't know if it's a mistake or if he's wanting to talk.
Jerry Paul? Officer Paul?
Mr. Mayor, I was wanting to make a comment at department directors. That's when I raised my hand, and so they just now saw it.
Oh, sorry about that. What do you got?
Do you want me to go back as far as the department director's comment? I get the announcements at the end there.
Yeah, let's wait till after this ordinance and then we'll go back to you, okay?
Okay.
So we can amend the time tonight like on weeknights, no later than 9:30, weekends 10:30, which would be Friday, Saturday nights?
Mm-mm.
Who said
Me.
Okay, what times?
We talked about 9, I thought.
So weeknights, that was Mayor Alderman Nemitz. Weeknights, 9 o'clock, weekends,
What is our sign ordinance? What is our noise ordinance going to affect?
noise ordinance goes into effect. Is it, Chief, do you know off the top of your head, is it 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock? We're pulling it up, hang on.
Mayor, it's, the noise ordinance is in effect all the time, Mayor, but it's at 10 o'clock, I believe, that it's within 15 feet.
You got that, Doug?
I'm looking at it right now, sir.
11 o'clock. Is that all the time or just weekends?
All the time. The using operator permitted to be played, used or operated any radio or television receiving set, musical instrument, phonograph, or other machine or device for the producing or reproducing of sound in such a manner as to disturb the peace, quiet, and comfort of the neighboring inhabitants, or at any time with louder volume that is necessary for convenient hearing for the person or persons who are in the room, vehicle, or chamber in which such machine or device is operated, and who are voluntary listeners thereto. The operation of any such instrument, phonograph, machine, or device between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. in such a manner as to be plainly audible at a distance of 15 feet from the building, structure, or vehicle which is located.
So the current code is 11, I'm hearing 9. So does 9 on weekdays and 10 on weekends work, since the code right now is 11?
I like to stick to that. Well,
9 o'clock?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Just C1, every C1.
I think the ordinance already says 11 o'clock. If we amend it to 10, that would be my thought.
I think 10 is reasonable on the weekend.
9 weekdays,
11 weekends.
so 9 weekdays, 10 weekends, which would be Friday, Saturday. Because kids, I mean, they're not getting up for school. They're not, you know, you don't have school on Friday, on Saturday, Sunday.
Mayor,
Yes,
this affects outdoor service only is what we're talking about, correct?
correct, just outdoor,
So this is not, does not govern indoor.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
So can everybody live with 9 weekday, 10 Friday, Saturday weekends? No, no.
I don't think so.
We live with 9:30. I can't believe we're having an auction on times.
Mayor, my preference, if you hear it, would be 9, just because I'd rather be more conservative in the neighborhood.
9,
Yes.
that's across the board, no difference between weeknights and weekends.
Well, from history, from when that place was operating anyway, and it was operating at the point it was a nuisance to the neighbors. Most times when I would go by there, even on a weekend, by 9 o'clock, that place was kind of closed down anyway. I did not see a lot of activity out there when I happened to go by there that late. So I would, as I said, in an effort to err on more conservative side at the beginning and see how that would open. If you're talking about amendments that can always be made at the future, if there's a problem that needs to be corrected, maybe we could always loosen it after enough consideration to see how this works out.
9 o'clock? All right, so we got it amended to no outside. So I guess it would be no outside seating activity facing a residential district after 9 PM.
Mayor,
Yes,
Mayor, I didn't research the latest sunset time, but in order to be sensible, you probably do need to make it more like 9:30 because I mean, people are not gonna, as soon as it's over, they're not gonna bounce out of their seats and catapult themselves to the car. You have to have a little bit of transition time too, whether they go home, they go inside or whatever. If the sunset at certain times, I don't know the longest, we're approaching now the longest day coming up. It's, probably 9:30 would give some flexibility. I know some said 9, some said 10. 9:30 would give a little more flexibility possibly. I don't know if the rest of the council would consider that or not, but could you discuss that maybe?
got 3 at 10. I've got Jim still at 9.
I'd be flexible, Mayor. If you want to go to 9:30, that's fine. I also wanted to know if you when you mentioned the verbiage on that a second ago, when you talked about no seating outside for the district facing the residential. So would that only be applicable, that restriction on the back end of this building?
Correct, because the compromise originally was to let them have seating out front.
Well, that's fine with me. I agree with that. I was thinking that their porch on the front would not be near the problem of the noise to the back of the house and so that's why I was curious if that was an intentional verbiage or if that was just something the way you mentioned it.
Yeah, and this is for all of the C1. So at 9:30, they would either have to vacate any area facing a residential district or move inside. Yeah. Sounds good, 9:30?
Yeah, I mean,
All right.
they can be out in front anytime.
Yeah, they can be out front anytime.
They
Yeah,
can be out
yeah.
in front, they can move from the back to the front, and thereby leaving.
Or they can move inside.
Yeah, either way.
Okay, so 9:30.
Do I need to withdraw my motion?
We will have to have the motion withdrawn and the second withdrawn.
It doesn't specify the time, so.
Well, no, that's why we're withdrawing the motion. So the motion and the second has been withdrawn, Wes.
You can't withdraw a motion. They can amend it, but you can't withdraw it.
Okay.
It's easier to amend it.
Okay, then we'll amend it. I apologize. I thought we had to withdraw it. So the motion's been amended. Both the first and the second has agreed to the amendment.
Do we have to vote on that amendment?
That's usually how it works.
So Wes, we vote on the amendment first. So do we have to have a second motion and second for the amendment?
I thought you were just voting on the ordinance, which is approving the changes as amended.
Okay, perfect. And so that change.
What's Terry's take on that?
He just agreed with you.
Okay.
So the amendment is that at 9:30, after 9:30, there is no seating allowed facing a residential district. I see heads nodding up and down, yes. So,
Mayor, can I suggest that be changed to within yards that adjoin a residential district to make it clear, because facing is going to be impossible to try to define.
Adjacent to, that's what.
In yards adjacent to a residential use.
Thank you. Perfect.
That's what he said, Scott. You just didn't hear it.
All righty, so we have 9:30.
It's a math thing.
All right, and that's the way the motion has been amended. We have a motion second. Any other discussion?
I wasn't second, because I would still like to go to 9 o'clock.
Okay. Roll call. Try again, Wes.
Did he respond? Ebersol,
Yes.
Eversol?
Agni,
Yes.
Nemitz,
Yes.
Rustler,
Yes.
Yes.
Hook, Camp,
Yes.
Martins,
Yes.
Riddle.
Yes.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you. New business. We have a motion to approve appointments of Brittany Newport, Luke Morovic, and Kylie Hannon as full-time police officers. Kyle, thank you, Kyle. As full-time police officers. Motion by Martin, second by Eversaw. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Who made the motion? Who made the motion?
Martins,
Thank you. I didn't hear you say, okay, I'm ready. Eversol,
Yes.
Agni, Nemitz,
Yes.
Rustler,
Yes.
Yes.
Camp, Mark,
Yes.
all right, and Chief, I forgot to go back to you. You had comments, Chief?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and comment now, Mayor. My comment, what I was going to say on at the director's report, this past quarterly meeting for the Monroe County 911 Board, James Mitchell, our IT professional, he came and attended that meeting. And I just wanted to point out that he had recently helped consult with the county on the relocation of our backup 911 center. And he helped the county save almost $4,000 on some equipment they were purchasing. But more importantly, at this past meeting, he convinced the Monroe County 911 Board to buy 3 new workstations here at our police department in Columbia at a price of $20,000 to upgrade those where they'll have the latest technology for the next 7 years. And that was just something I wanted to point out at the police report. And so that's what I had, Mayor.
Thank you so very much. All right. Next on new business, resolution 2020-12, approving a memorandum of understanding between the City of Columbia and Monroe County Emergency Telephone System Board. Chief, do you have anything to add to that? I think this is just our normal MOA.
Well, just so everybody realizes what this is, Mayor, this was actually 6 months ago, the Monroe County 911 Board, they agreed to take on a legacy cost of dispatching for Omnigo software. And so they're picking up $40,000 a year savings to the city where they're going to pay for this for the 911 dispatching. And this memorandum of understanding just documents that.
Awesome. Any questions, comments? Entertain a motion. Motion by Martin, second by Eversaw. Any other questions, comments? Roll call. Wes?
Eversol, Agni, Nemitz,
Yes.
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 Yep, everybody said yes.
Yes.
got it.
We are not having the motion on number 3, Chris, or what's your comment?
I just wanted to give an update of the bids. And kind of let you know I'm working with IDOT. The bids come in higher than the engineer's estimate. So I'm trying to see what the options are that we have. If it's over 10%, we have to do a special award letter with some reasons. I'm looking into to see if we can rebid it. And if so, when? I'm looking to see if we could revise and rebid, and again, if so, when? There's not a lot of things to revise within this particular project. One thing that we could revise is right now we were replacing a couple culverts there on Quarry. We have it done with, some temporary signals and stuff. We could completely close it down, which probably could have some savings, but we don't know, right? Also looking to see if we can maybe incorporate this project with a couple others that we have. After doing some deliberation today, I think it's probably highly unlikely because this is fiscal year 20 money. The rest of the funds are fiscal year 21. I think there's some issues there. Not that it may not be impossible, but it could be not as simple as just switching over. Similar to what we did on Main Street, but the problem is on Main Street, we did all the consolidation parts that we did and obligation of those funds. We don't want to lose the money, obviously, no matter what we decide. And there is some uncertainty when you go to rebid, because you don't know what you're going to get, even if you've done some things to maybe change the project. Like we could change the shoulders on the north side from asphalt to rock, but eventually that'd be grass. I don't think that's exactly what we want to do. But we could make some changes, but there's no guarantee those changes are going to be realized, once if we rebid it. So I just want to kind of give an update that I'm working with IDOT to see what our options are. And as far as to cover the increased costs, if we decide to go that way, I mean, keep in mind, a couple reports ago, I made a mention that we've got some not only rebuild money that was kind of unexpected. So there's, $700,000 that we're going to be getting over the next couple of years it's kind of unexpected. So I think we can make it work dollar-wise, but I just want to review what the options are and see this. And I don't know the reasons exactly why there's a big difference. We tried to do some research. Part of it, I think maybe the cost of the culvert was maybe estimated a little low. Plus you got the 255 project going on, which is taking a lion's share of resources. There's big incentives for them to get done as fast as they can. I think it's restricted some of the contractors so they couldn't get asphalt bids because everybody else was taking, they weren't allowing, and so the prices were a little bit higher too. So I think
one area where they both the same,
what?
In the bids.
In the bids, if there's one area that both markets.
They don't give us a breakdown of bids. They just give us a lump right now to start with. We try to do what kind of investigation that we can.
So basically, Chris, you're going to come back after you do a little more investigating with some options and what we can look forward to down the road.
Yes. And
okay.
So, but the one problem we have is that we don't meet for 3 weeks.
Okay.
So, I don't know how it's going to play.
Yeah, one quick question. So if we do go back and rebid this, can IDOT change that amount of money that they put toward this or not?
Nope. That's already been obligated, the fiscal year money, and so that's stuck. Everything over and above is on us anyhow. So that's a good question.
Okay. Any other questions for the city engineer? All right. Mr. Donaghy, discussion on the subdivision plat for Country Crossing 2. I'm assuming that the preliminary plat came in and meets all the codes and everything else.
Generally speaking, yes, we had some comments. They've since addressed those, and the revised documents and revised drawing have been submitted, and all those meet the code. The only thing, there's just two things that are being asked that are deviations from the subdivision code requirement that I have outlined in the my Plan Commission staff report that I included in the packet for you. And that is one, a request to approve one of the cul-de-sac lengths. It's about 700 plus or minus feet, whereas maximum cul-de-sac length per the code is 500 feet in length. And Chris is there. I'm sure he can answer any questions, but basically, the idea here is that it's only 15 lots that are served by that cul-de-sac so a 700-foot street. So given the small number of homes, the city engineer didn't have any concerns with the length, if you were so inclined to approve that. And the other was that typically by state statute, preliminary plats expire in a year, but you can extend that up to 5 years, provided that you have the schedule of when the phases will be constructed, and that is included in the packet as well. So other than that, everything else is as required, and the two things just required, which would just be not be done separately, not just be done as part of the subdivision plat document, because they're located on the plat. So I don't have anything further. You get, I think you're pretty familiar with the general layout. You've already seen the general layout. They just adjusted the lot sizes to account for straight R3 zoning, and went with it from there.
All right, any questions? This is for discussion. We'll have more later on this if there's any questions, comments right now. All righty. Next is discussion of sign variance for 1011 South.
Okay, so so basically what this sign variance is for, and I did see that Andy with Summit Signs was on the call or was participating in the meeting. Essentially what you have before you, there was a variance approved previously for the monument sign, and I think you can all envision the sign that I'm talking about, the big 11 South monument sign that sits on the side of the hill. And essentially what they're asking to do is a variance to allow some additional square footage of sign to allow the electronic message center to be added to the sign. So it's an existing sign with an electronic message center for all intents and purposes. Roughly the same size as the one that the city just did at the Public Works building, slightly larger. But it's it's pretty close to the same size. And then, so that's the variance. Is for the additional 123.7, of course, 0.75 square feet is what the variance is. Upon consideration, the Plan Commission, in their capacity as the Street Graphics Advisory Committee, did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the variance. And they did find that the standards for approval were met. So you have all of the documents and the drawings, etc., in the packet in front of you. Once again, this is just presentation. We'll answer whatever questions we can for you this evening, and then it'll come back for approval at the next meeting.
All right, any questions, comments on that?
Mayor, I do have a question.
Yes.
I had tried to get through that packet. As far as the reason they came back for this sign, and as large as it is, their justification for needing the extra size was what? The distance from the road? What was the idea that this here sign was in need of enlargement, as opposed to the next time we have to address someone's request for a variance that, well, they aren't the same because it's closer to the road, smaller building? What's the justification?
Well, essentially, this would allow them to advertise for the entire development. And so one of the things in, I don't know if Andy can join in after I get done. James, if you can help him with that, in case I miss something. But the intent with this is essentially on the large, as you know, 11 South is expanding right now. So there's going to be, the property owner, Mr. Capias, has plans for at least 2 additional buildings in the near future, other than the one that is currently under construction. So the intent here, the larger tenants obviously are able to put static signage on the buildings as well. Okay. But the smaller tenants in the buildings don't have any way to get any exposure out to the primary traffic corridor on Route 3. So this would allow also those businesses, I mean, there's going to be a number of businesses when you figure in 3 office buildings that don't have any sign exposure, and this would allow, this would help with that issue, as well as identifying the entire development itself.
So Scott, what I was concerned about was if you go down the road a little bit to the Columbia Center and where Joe Capias has that sign with all the businesses inside the center, and he put the top of that now with Burger King on it, if he would come to us and say, you just approved a sign down here for this whole development, he has the Columbia Center Marketplace area, what would we be able to say as far as, do we want another big sign down there? Is there something unique about where 11 South is that warrants this sign, as opposed to he comes in and wants a big one down there for the marketplace?
Well, I think the better question for this situation is he would be allowed to have one of those signs for each lot. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have one big sign? That's really what we're looking at as a comparison.
Okay, so there's uniqueness to this that distinguishes it from the next time we get a variance request from them, or even the new bank that was bought out, Columbia National. They wanted a smaller LED sign to keep them from coming back and saying, we want a 6x11 sign too. And we could push back on that, saying that this is because of the development and the size of the development and the number of square footage or tenants or something like that that makes this warranted.
Yeah, if you feel that's what warrants it, then yes, that can be your determination.
I just don't want to expand the size of the sign ordinance, just, to be where we went this way. Now we can't go back and distinguish between the next person that asked for the same variance. And, why we would be able to say that this is a unique situation that warranted an enlarged sign, as opposed to every place located down Route 3 wants a large sign. And we just think it's aesthetically wrong. And we have a variant, or have an ordinance that says that we only want to give out variances on these occasions. And I just want to make sure this met a standard that we were given a variance on an occasion that is unique for this property.
This property is unique, and that would be the whole justification of approving a variance. That's the only reason one of the only reasons you can approve a variance is because there's something unique with the property, and that threshold has to be met. So if you feel that they've made that threshold, as 8 members of the Plan Commission did, then that would be up to you to determine whether it.
Well, I thought you made a good argument with the fact that there were multiple signs potentially available versus one large sign. To me, that would go ahead and be a reason to do that.
All righty.
I would not argue with that.
Okay, Alderman Agnew.
Yes, I'm going to bring up a similar point. If there's 10 or 15 businesses in those buildings eventually, we're going to have these things flashing at us all the time, all the different entities within those buildings. I mean, they are a distraction, and the more we get, the whole parkway, the Memorial Parkway, is going to be polluted with all these flashing signs. And once they're there, it's going to be very difficult to remove that kind of activity. I'm just watching it deteriorate out there. Some nice buildings going in, but the signage is flashing.
Anybody else have any comments, discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session under 5 ILCS 120-2C5, purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, if somebody be so inclined.
Also move, Your Honor.
Motion by Nemeth, second by Eversaw. Roll call.
Eversaw.
Yes.
Agnew. Nemeth.
Yes.
Ressler.
Yes.
Holcamp.
Yes.
Martins.
Yes.
James, everybody in the waiting room now?
Not yet.